I mean, as cliche as it is, heat culture is very real. And it's the way I wrote this, before the finals. It's not just what they do, it's how they live. It's just
Right.
what they believe in every day and just how they kind of operate and they kind of churn out these guys year in and year out. And we're surprised when Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, Duncan Robinson, these guys come out of nowhere. But it's not a coincidence. It's what Miami does. And I think you saw it in that game too. What was really stunning is I think if I would have told you Miami was going to win game two, you probably would have said, well, Jimmy probably had 35, 8, and
Yes,
9,
fact.
right?
Yeah.
Jimmy Butler had probably had a fantastic game. And then Jimmy's numbers ended up being pretty good. He had 21 points, 9 assists. But really, they won that game because of Max Strus coming out hot after going 0 for 10 in game one. Gabe Vincent playing an incredible game. I think you saw kind of heat culture shining through, and that these young guys who they've developed in-house being on a stage like that where you're down 0-1, half of the city of Denver is already getting their t-shirts ready for the parade. And those guys came in and say, nah, this is going to be a series. We're ready to play. We're not scared. And that's what makes this Heat team so special, that no matter what stage they're on, no matter what team they're playing against, those guys come in ready to play and they're unafraid. And that's what makes this series so interesting, because I think if you just go player by player, I think everybody would agree that the Nuggets have the more talented roster.
Right.
But the Heat just have that intangible in them every time they step on the floor, that they're ready to fight and they believe. And I think that's something that you can never take away from a team, is that belief. And that's what they have, I think, over anybody else in this playoff field.
No, I mean, great perspective. There's a lot to unpack there. I'm going to start with this. You kind of alluded to the idea that a lot of people thought Denver would be, on its way and celebrating pretty soon here. Admittedly, one of the things I love about covering the playoffs in like a day-to-day marathon fashion is that the pettiness is inevitable, like 1 or 2 or 3 games into each series, right? So this one, post game 2, and I had this in my column today, I kind of alluded to it. Post game 2, somebody from the Heat had kind of, leaned in a little bit and shared with me that, hey, you happen to see that column, and this is a guy I respect greatly. And listen, we've all written stuff that you could argue might miss the mark, but Mark Kislett from the Denver Post been doing this a long time, and Mark had a column that he basically said, just clear the streets, get the parade ready. Here come the Nuggets, and that is how a lot of people I think felt after game one. And, and he kind of had the stones to put himself out there and write it. But when they lose game 2, of course, the Heat are going to, this is what happens. Then they kind of say, oh yeah, we saw that, that we thought that was an interesting little, bulletin board material. And here they are. But, the Spo part to me, as far as we takeaways game 2 going into game 3, watching Spo kind of post-game press conference and the way his mind works, and a lot of focus, of course, on that last answer to the question from Ramona Shelburne of ESPN when she asked about how they guarded Jokic. I'm going to kind of skip past that. I thought that was, not that big a deal. But Spo talking about the complexity of a series like this, and talking about the idea that they have a ton of respect for this Nuggets team, and they didn't want to lose that kind of ethos as they go into game 3. But also, I don't know how, I'm not expressing it very well, Will, but like you saw this mad scientist trying to get out of the press conference very quickly because he had a lot of work to go back to do. And he talked about some of these adjustments that, he puts Kevin Love in that starting lineup. And I hear you on the Jimmy Butler part that he didn't play all that well, but defensively, Kevin being in that lineup obviously moves Jimmy over to Jamal. And Jamal, was not nearly as impactful in game 2 as he was in game 1. I don't know if you want to go down that road or what else jumped out at you, but they got it done.
No, I don't know what you mean, Sam. I get the sense that Spo loves talking to us every time we go to one of these press conferences. He just indulges in the media experience. But nah, I think that's I would say, if I were to rank what's been most interesting about covering the Heat throughout this playoff run, is just seeing how Spo operates and the way his
Right.
mind works. I think he's a brilliant coach, and I think you knew that going in, but being around him on a daily basis, you really get a glimpse of just the way he views the game, the way he prepares that team, how he's able to kind of balance his logic, the way he moves on a day-to-day basis. But he's a very emotional coach, and he coaches with his feeling. He's not a pure X's and O's guy. He coaches He allows his his feelings and his emotions to come out in the way he coaches. If you watch him on the sidelines, he's stomping, he's running on the court, he's grabbing people,
Well,
and
how many,
also
real quick, just real quick, how many times in this run have you heard him refer to himself as a masochist, which always cracks
oh
me?
my God, there are so many Spoisms
Yeah. Right.
I've taken from this playoff run. The masochist, the beauty of the grind. He loves that
Right.
one. Saying
Right.
Jimmy Butler is gnarly. He's got a lot of Spoisms, but I think one thing that just shines through constantly when you talk to him is just his perspective from being here and doing this before. And I think you referred
Yeah.
to the Mark Kisler column. I think the feeling you got from a lot of Denver people where they were so excited to get that game one win, and for Miami, they were like, "Hey, we've been there, done that. Each of our three
Yes.
titles we won before, we lost game one, so
Right.
we know how to bounce back from a game one loss. We know this is a long series." And I think Spo above anybody really understands just the ebbs and flow of a playoff series, especially when you get to this stage in the finals. It just runs for so long with these multiple days between, and you have all of this talk about, when you lose a game, how terrible your team is, or the other team is so much better than yours, how Nikola Jokic is the best ever, and Jimmy Butler, he doesn't have it for this playoff series. And they heard that for multiple days going into game two, and they just came in ready. And I think the way Erik Spoelstra kind of has that team prepared and they have that experience, I think that's one of the interesting factors in this series, that as talented as Denver is, those guys haven't been here before. And with Miami, they don't have D Wade or LeBron walking through that door, but you feel that organization and their experience in this field, and then in this deep into the playoffs, and they know how to move through this, and they know how to kind of take it all in and do what you're supposed to do to make sure you're prepared. And I think it's going to be fascinating to see how they come out game three, because it went all of a sudden, this series went from, man, Denver's in control, they're in the driver's seat, to all of a sudden Miami wins game three, and everybody's sitting around like, uh-oh, here we
Right.
go again.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
about to shock the world one more time.